Hey, Adam, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Brian. So I'm Adam Vaughn. I am an enterprise sales rep in the software industry for about 20 years now, based out of Central Texas. Been working for a few different companies over those years. Frequent follower of your podcast and your videos. I saw one the other day that said you really value the people that come from the hospitality and service industry. That's kind of my path. I was
Is it?
a
Yeah.
yeah long-term college student that decided to take a break from college and wait tables for a long time, and then went directly from there to sales, my entry-level sales role, and have worked every type of sales role that we typically have in the corporate structure. So um, market development, business development, inside sales, inside transactional closer, outside, inside sales manager, the gamut.
Yeah, I was surprised at the reaction of that post because my point there was not just that people out of hospitality have great transferable skills, but I can't imagine a group that's really suffering so badly
Yeah,
and deserve a leg up.
yeah,
And, when I tell people about B2B sales, they almost don't believe it as
yeah,
far as like the money you can make.
yeah.
It's doctor lawyer money with Duck Dynasty education, right?
There's no doubt it is life changing, and it can be that at many different levels based on where you're at in your career. And frankly, that was why I waited tables. I could
Right.
go in and make my rent on a weekend.
Yeah.
And I love what you mentioned about fixing problems, because you inherit problems that you didn't create. And I immediately thought about, like, I live in Texas where everybody loves liquid cheese and margaritas, right? Queso. And I spilt hot queso down a 10-year-old's back in front of her parents. And now I need to fix it. And what I learned there was apologize once as sincerely as possible and fix it. We
Fix it.
comped half the meal, gave her a t-shirt to replace her Disney's t-shirt that got uh, ruined. And we took a really hostile crowd, and they left the restaurant very happy and coming back and actually requested me again. So forgiveness is a powerful thing. Fixing problems is a powerful thing. I don't know. I just share that because it really resonated with me, what you talked about.
Yeah, because I'd seen a pattern of people coming out of sports, military, performing arts. And then I had this week where everyone came out of hospitality.
You're right.
And I go, oh, boom, I should have put it together. And a lot of people like you probably came out of retail as well,
I,
right?
I
Yeah.
did. In fact, that was my first sales role, the transition from hospitality industry into sales, but it was retail sales. So that still had that hospitality component,
Yeah.
selling cell phones at a bunch of indirect retailers, the Best Buys and Circuit Cities back when they had those. And that taught me a lot. But I also had the benefit of learning from my father. He was in the RV business, and I washed trailers when I was a young kid, and I got to listen to him doing deals. I got to
Okay.
listen to him interacting with the public, and I got to see what service meant. And I think there was probably a lot I picked up that I'm not aware of that has transferred.
Yeah. I mean, certainly a mindset. And that's
Right.
another thing. If you grow up in a sales household, it, there's a lot of just osmosis that happens.
It Yeah, like I said, I'm probably not aware of everything I picked up.
Yeah.
It's just in my DNA.
Right. And you see that like in musicians, if they grow up in a musical family, it's just natural.
Absolutely, and professional athletes as well. It's so
Yeah.
rare to see a professional athlete. I mean, like, the odds against becoming a professional athlete are just astronomical, but you see time and time again that people defy those odds in their families.
Yeah. And what was it like? Because the big shift from coming from retail and hospitality is you have to talk, you have to go outbound. People
hmm
don't come to you anymore.
Right. That's, yeah, great point. Um, it there was definitely a challenge there, right? Everybody has the nerves of cold calling, of self-defeating thoughts, and analysis paralysis. You don't want to do what you fear,
Right.
and so to me that was one of the biggest obstacles when I started selling in the dot-com world, my first professional desk sales job. But you know, I think what helped with that is just you're always going to look for that immediate connection, whether they walk up to you or whether you're walking up to them. What is that immediate connection that tells them this is worth a conversation? And so to me, I think if you have that ability, it doesn't matter whether you're on the giving or the receiving end. You want to find that immediate common bond, because if you don't, it just won't last. I don't know.
And so what are you focused on now? Your leader coach is what I read
Ye-
on your profile.
Yeah, I probably need to update that a little bit.
You're
In
now
large
running the
part,
company.
yeah, an individual contributor that focuses on where I can help mentor others and work with the other sellers in my region that may not be as senior, helping them advance their deals and work with them in a way that I was worked with when I was earlier in my career. Um, and and so that's what I focus on. But I focus on our largest. So I work for PlanView, and we're digital work management, which is a really uh, fast-growing industry right now, given our conditions.
Yeah.
And and I focus on all of our largest accounts that have some major operations in Texas.
And how do you divide your time? Because the coaching and mentoring can can easily suck up a lot of time.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm actively focusing on, and something I've also paid attention to what you've talked about, right? Examining my career and where I've been the most successful and where my strengths are, and trying to make sure that I'm spending 90% of my time growing those strengths rather than trying to fix all of my weaknesses, because I certainly have a lot of those. Um, but yeah, quite simply making sure that I'm spending the majority of my working time focusing on the accounts that have the conditions that are most likely to yield the largest deals.
Look at that. So many people, they just say, well, I've got this territory, and they open up their CRM, and it's just a list of names and companies, and they think they're all equal.
Yeah, I think I suffered from that a lot, and that can be crippling because you can see so much, and you recognize these names of companies, and um, everybody wants to have as many as possible for that bluebird that might fall through, come through the window, and those are all nice, right? We all benefit from those when they come our way, but I much prefer starting the conversation and setting the table and having the opportunity to connect people at these companies that otherwise wouldn't be connected, right? That um, I grew up in Houston, and I tell people that sometimes, and they're like, "Oh, do you know Joe Smith?" I'm like, "What's a
five
city of
million
two and a half
people.
million, 4 million people?" Well, the same is true at these companies that have hundreds of thousands of employees.
Right. They all think they're like going to lunch together.
Right. And they don't know each other. And that's, to me, what's exciting is if you can take that one conversation you have here and connect it with the other conversation you've had over here. And most importantly, they benefit from the new mutual interaction. That's exciting.
And I think that's a characteristic of senior salespeople is they become the champion. The B players have to have a champion at
Right.
the account,
Right.
and they
Yeah.
service the champion.
And the guide and the Sherpa, like you mentioned, I keep referencing your videos, but it's because I get incredible value out of your insights. But yeah, when you can only connect those two parts, those two disparate parts, if you've established some sort of trust and
Yes.
expertise, and then they want to meet because they see what's that mutually beneficial opportunity. And then when they have that and realize that, then you earn the right to become the guide and to grow and build from there. And that's incredibly engaging, right? When, to me, what I had a problem with is I was not good at mass blasts and mass emails and just seeing what comes through on their click rates, and then following up on that, and the website visits and all. And don't get me wrong, those have a good
The
place for
place. Yeah.
intelligence, but to me, it's not a way to generate demand. It's much more about quality and connection.
Yeah, because my question to CEOs and sales leaders is, can you sell with a commercial? Give me your elevator pitch. From that, can you convert people from unaware to curious or interested? Most likely it's, who we are, what we do, what you get out of it.
Right, right.
And, I bet you can't do that with what you're selling. It takes a conversation.
And a lot of them, and
Yeah.
you're going to, and you have to continue to earn the right for the next conversation and make it relevant, and not check in, not follow up, but offer value, and create that pool. And I guess that's the art of what we do, is when they're not expecting to interact with you, and then they have a positive interaction, and then converting that push to a pull. um, Something I think a lot about, and how do you do that, and what resources or what plays or what interactions you can create that have that value, that create that pull.
And that's it, because too many people have had the luxury of either managing accounts or having inbound or having a brand where the problem's recognized
Hmm.
and it's hot and people are looking at you and three others and they know what it does and they know why they need it and they're going to pick one in the next 3 months. But a lot of us don't.
To me, there's nothing more frustrating than the emergency RFP. It's
Right.
so frustrating. Like, we need you to respond to this document a week from now, and you did not know this. And we've all talked about it in sales, the blind RFP, and how you should reject it. But to me, um, it. I guess the reason I don't like it is because it tells me I didn't do my job in that department or in that company the way I should have, because it came to me as a surprise, and now I'm being treated as a commodity.
Right. And somebody else is already there
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's column A.
yep.
And now you're supposed to do a bunch of work just to fill a file for some procurement officer.
Right, right. And you could be the best suited solution for their
Doesn't matter.
problems and what
Doesn't matter.
and and this is what I was telling one of our reps just the other day, is like, there's no doubt we are the best fit for what they want to do, but the business conditions are not present, and you need to walk.
Right.
And that's a hard thing to do, like being willing to walk, especially when you have nothing behind that, is still just very important, I think. That goes back to time management and to value.
Yeah. And how did you come to these epiphanies? Because
Failing,
and you got
doing it
pissed
wrong
or
and
yeah.
long enough. Yeah. Um, so um, I think one of the most important things that happened to me in my career was probably being fired. And I learned a lot from that. And I learned, you know, I didn't understand where I was not being set up for success in that role. And I went into it blindly accepting it and trying to make it work, and quickly became bored. And when I became bored, I stopped working as hard. And when you don't work hard in sales, you don't have a job. And just having that, um, just being very self-critical and self-aware about, yeah, that was my fault. I forced their hand. I made them do that to me. I shouldn't blame them. I should blame myself. And using that to understand, okay, go and find a company that you're passionate about working for, whether it's the people, the culture, the the product, the region, or hopefully all of the above. Put yourself into that and go and make it happen. Pursue that. And that was a big turning point for me. And then several big failures along the way. You know, I don't think you can come to do deals at their highest level without having some significant losses before. I mean, obviously everybody is going to get a surprise or two, but to do it consistently, repeatedly at a high level you're going to have some big failures, and those sting.
And trying, I think the losses are critical because you paid the price for that lesson. And too many people just brush it off, get up and move forward. It's not that
Yeah,
you shouldn't do that, but you got to learn the lesson.
yeah, exactly.
You just, if you lose a big deal, you lose 10, 20, 30, 50K a commission. That was the cost of the lesson.
Yeah, and that becomes quite expensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been with my current company for 5 years, and 4 of those I've been at or above plan. But the one I wasn't was 46%, and that's a huge change. That's way below quota. And I sunk a lot into one deal, and we lost. We were the last two, and we lost. And 6 different trips to that city and multiple meetings with executives, thinking that at one point we had it, and being surprised at the end when there was a board level connection we weren't aware of that swung the pendulum to the competitor's side. And yeah, just so many lessons that you learned. Very, very expensive lesson. But since then, I've had 4 consecutive years doing very well, and very fortunate. But I always think and try to go back to, what I experienced in those losses to try to understand how to do things differently.
And how do you interpret the loss? Do you have a process?
Just a formal process for kind of a debrief or
to prevent it from happening again.
Yeah, it's not very formal for me, but it is constant. Yeah, just to kind of a post-mortem, if you will. I do spend some time and reflection on those. Again, trying to be as self-critical as possible. Where may I have just known that there was a challenge or a problem and chosen to ignore that? And why did I choose to ignore that? And what was the cost of ignoring that? Where was I probably too confident and too arrogant? And how, or maybe how did I depend too much on just a select few of people and not fan out and crystallize across the organization? Where was I too much of an optimist? Where was I too much of a skeptic? You want to be a healthy skeptic, but you can't. You've got to have a good balance.
Too paranoid, have it get in the
right.
way.
Right. So I just view that as a constant state of being rather than necessarily a discrete event.
And why did it upset you? Was it because it was a waste of time? You didn't get the money? You didn't get the accolades?
For me personally, my driver is validation and worth, but from not from just a superficial personal standpoint, but like it validates all of your effort and your, all of the reading you've done to become the expert in your field, all of the questions you have asked to learn their business and to make that connection and to connect people with other people and unite them around this common vision or common opportunity or threat or whatever the driver is for their business. To validate that succeeded is very rewarding. To know, I mean, we're not solving world peace or world hunger, but to know that you've implemented something that right is just very rewarding. And that's what I, to me, that's what I lose the most when it's to say that they didn't see it and they did. And I don't know, that it just stings.
What worked with me is, if I lost a deal or delayed or it stalled, I'd look at the amount of time that I put into it, and I'd say to myself, all the crap I give myself about taking a week off on vacation, and I put
Hmm.
8, 10 weeks into this deal, and all of a sudden it's not coming to fruition. I go, I could have taken 2 months off. And I talk
Yeah.
to CEOs all the time, and usually they say, "Oh, we don't have a sales problem." I go, "Well, let's take a look. Do you have a competitor? Yeah. Two? Yeah.
Right.
Oh, they're about as big as you. Why isn't that money in your pocket? You have a
Yeah.
sales problem."
Yeah. Yeah. And I think about that as well. It it specifically with 2016, I think about how much time was lost and where it could have been spent otherwise, and that stings. And I thought a lot about how my competitors spent their time and where that may have been different, and did they work as hard? And um, but at the same time, you always have to balance that with, like, look, you maybe you could be working too hard, and that could be working against you.
Right. I mean, you don't, I've seen a lot of people, including myself, you go after a big logo, and the idea of closing it is not just financial, but your status within the company. It's a challenge and everything. But is it closable within your compensation window? And I've seen a lot of people put a whole year into something, nothing happens.
Right.
And what also got me was the idea of wasting time just kills me.
Hmm.
You know, hours and hours and hours of working on something and not winning it.
Yeah, I don't have anything to offer other than violent agreement on that.
Well,
It is very painful to think, you know, all of the critical thought and all of the practice and rehearsal and the delivery and walk in the halls, to leave that knowing that that was not good enough is, it it stings. And I think everybody has said this before, but the sting of loss is much greater than the thrill of victory. Um,
and how
and I
have
wish
you
it wasn't that way, but I think it is in people that are really competitive.
have you developed a sense, like what I call like a BS meter when I talk to somebody? You know, I look for inconsistencies, bravado, how
Y-
other people accept what they say.
Yes, yes. I think that has gotten better, and I think that just comes with the experience and just doing it 10,000 hours, that of uh, and for me, what I like to do is just ask the same question in a bunch of different ways over multiple successive conversations, and keep track of what was the change from that. And if there is a change, politely asking them what that change was, and then triangulating that with what other people say, and rather than obviously the direct approach, which would be a little more confrontational on the
Well,
BS side.
yeah, because in the B2B sale, we fall into some classic traps where the person tells us they're the decision maker,
Right.
right? Well, you're the decision maker as far as talking to me, cooperating, helping move it forward. But you probably, unless you're at least a vice president, you probably have zero sign off. You can't buy anything but what you can put on a corporate credit card.
Right.
So
Right.
your decisions are valuable, but we need more people involved in this.
Right. And if from the buyer's perspective, if they do this 5 times in their career, that's probably quite a bit.
Right.
And we're
They didn't go
doing
to
this
the,
all the time. And so it's our job to tell them and to politely offer that expertise in consulting that says, our experience has been, there are a lot of other things that need to occur between here and your next milestone.
right.
And here's the evidence, and here's the value of doing that. And this is getting into being the coach and the guide and the
Yeah.
Sherpa, as you mentioned.
That's it. Because I love when I get hate I did a video of quit asking about what's your decision making process, because they
Right.
don't know. and,
No.
and they're going to tell you something. Oh, well, I'm going to meet with Joe and Joe's going to approve it. And the pushback I get are from pretty senior people. Oh, go to the top, or you're dealing with the wrong person, or what do you mean they don't know the decision making process? And I know they're account managers, they're not salespeople. Because,
Right.
if you got an existing account, they've already bought it, the decision making process is pretty much easier. They don't have to
Right.
evaluate. It does more make sense.
And we're fortunate in what we do at the company I work for, that that's a part of what we do. It's
Which is
to
great.
deconstruct a piece of work and to tell you all of the elements necessary to bring that piece of work to life, to achieve the business outcome. And so that's where I offer that, look, we have to take a page out of our own book and let you know all of these steps that you're missing, and tell us a little bit about those, or let me offer them to you, because at worst, it just affirms what you've already thought of, at worst. But
Right.
at best, maybe I've given you a few extra steps that would be valuable for you to figure out, because you do work in such a large organization with so many people involved, and you probably don't know all of your processes.
No, because I've
Right.
been a VP at a Fortune 500 company. No one, if I tried to buy something, my boss would say, yeah, "That's not your job. Go back and do your job." Right.
Right.
And there's nobody who has happier ears than customers, because they think if it makes logical sense, it will naturally happen.
And
But
that's where you get told a bunch of their wishes, not a bunch of
realities,
realities, right?
yeah. And that a B2B purchase is an unnatural act. The company is set up not to spend money,
Yeah.
not to spend money.
And it's not getting any easier with current business conditions, right? So uh, it's the game is
Yeah.
always changing. Even if they thought they knew it a year ago, it's changed.
And since they're buying so many little things instead of few big things, the C-suite, although they don't go to the board sometimes for approval, they go for consensus and feedback. And it's their neighbor, it's their spouse, it's anybody in their network, and it flip-flops.
Right. And especially with what we're experiencing now, it's harder to create those relationships in a virtual world, right? I tell people we all became inside sales reps overnight. And what are you doing to create this relationship you normally would have built over several on-site meetings, in-person meetings, lunches, dinners, events, golf, whatever your thing is? And that's really hard to do. And I do spend a lot of time thinking about how I'm going to offer creative ways of connection, and consistent connection to bridge that gap.
Right. Because although the phone is powerful and synchronous, it has a sense of urgency to it. Meaning, unlike video has less of a sense of urgency to it. There's typically a time frame.
Hmm.
A phone call, it's like transactional. Okay, let's take care of business. I ask you questions, you answer questions, we cover the topics, we move on. That's what we
That's
miss
a
with the lunches and the dinners and the happy hours and the breakfasts and the coffees. It wasn't so much transactional. You
right.
had time to build rapport.
Right. One of the things that I've learned recently over the last 9 to 10 months is the value of a daily stand up. When you know that you have a deal, and you know that there are all of these activities that need to go to be performed on both sides to get to a deal. Or if you're in the late stages, you maybe it's still competitive. Um, Offer the stand up and be willing to meet if they're large enough, right? You can't do this with every transaction. It's not worth the time. But if it's large enough and you're far along enough, it's definitely pretty valuable, because um, we did that for a month with one of my recent thankfully a new customer. And by the end of the month, we were fearing the end of the stand-up. We were like, well,
Go
I
with the
guess,
withdrawal. Yeah.
I get, yeah, and because we had become so accustomed to every morning at 9 o'clock, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to talk about these things, and we're going to set things up, and we're going to knock them down. And you can't help but have some natural personal conversations. And the more that you do that, the more you build a relationship, a friendship, trust, and I can tell you it's genuinely mutual. And so that just one thing I've learned in this
Well,
recent adaptation.
and that's it, because it gets away from transactional,
Yeah,
where I'll call you when I need something, you call me when you need something.
and offering it is a good way to test the health of your deal.
Right. Because
If they say no, then maybe you haven't earned that. Maybe you have some other steps that
yeah,
you need to go through before you can get to them to commit to that much interaction.
because every decision has an element of momentum. And
Yes,
and momentum is really hard to build, hard to maintain, and if it stops, really hard to reinitiate.
absolutely. That's a big thing I've focused on, and I was thankful enough to do a deal early in my career as an apprentice. And I couldn't be more thankful to my mentor for allowing me to go in and see how manufacture urgency almost sounds a little too fake, but how can you offer frequent interaction of high value such that you can get so far ahead of your competitor and do it in a point of value to your customer that it accelerates your deal and keeps your competitor from being able to catch up. And that was one, getting fired was an important learning lesson. Losing big deals, an important learning lesson. On the positive side, the most important experience to me was that doing that deal as an apprentice. And it was the largest deal in that company's history for the company I worked for at the time. And it was just so valuable to see how good deals are done. And
Right. And if you look at the really great sales reps, they build that into their process.
every time I am faced with a similar opportunity, I say, what would Adrian do? And
There
he's
you
my
go.
mentor.
Yeah.
And I try to put myself in thinking about how he would do it. And I'll call him and
Right.
we'll examine things to the extent that we can for confidentiality and all that. But yeah, it's so valuable to have a mentor or other set of eyes that you can depend on and trust on, trust to help you out.
That's it. You kind of hijack someone else's judgment.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, well, hopefully it's reciprocal, right? Hopefully you can offer something in return. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
definitely, I'm stealing that as much as I can.
That's the smartest thing.
Yeah.
Hey, this has been a fun conversation. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
LinkedIn primarily. I'm not big on Twitter, but big on LinkedIn. That's where I follow most of your content, and then I go from there to your podcasts. So that's my primary social.